Whoa. Oh, dude.
Whoa, that is crazy.
Can I design a luxury 3D printed chair and sell it on the high-end market? This year, I've been on a journey to push the limits of 3D printed furniture. I recreated the iconic Magispun chair, which didn't turn out great, but I learned from my mistakes and 3D printed the Heller Fortune chair. Thankfully, these videos haven't gotten me sued yet. In fact, quite the opposite. But that's a story for another video. They have, however, gotten me hungry for more. I think it's time for me to design my own 3D printed chair and see if I can sell it on the luxury furniture market. We're keeping track of the time invested, the expenses, so at the end of the video when I sell the chair, we can see if it's actually worth it. But even if this build loses me money, this is probably the coolest thing I've ever made. Before I could do anything, I needed to come up with a design. So I looked at a high-end furniture store for inspiration, but the massive variety of lounge chairs had me feeling a little overwhelmed. So to help narrow in on an idea, that is so hard to say. Narrow in on an idea. I turned to something I've never used before. AI. Whoa, guys, put down the pitchforks. I'm not gonna just copy a Midjourney result that was probably stolen from 100 digital artists. This was just to give me a jumping off point. And as you'll see later on, the final design looks nothing like these renderings. Although this one does look a lot like one of the first chairs I ever made out of 120 layers of hand-cut cardboard. The renderings looked pretty cool, but I felt like they were kind of boring. If I was gonna design an original 3D printed chair, I wanted it to have a wow factor. And you know what makes me say wow?
Wow.
Indoor hanging chairs. Nothing screams I'm a cool, fun person like having what is essentially a swing inside of your house. The moment the Midjourney results started coming in, I knew I was onto something. These chairs were exciting, dynamic, sexy. Okay, maybe not sexy, but they were very, very cool. I started screenshotting my favorites and sketching on top. I knew there was something here. One of the renderings even provided a clue for how a multi-part print could go together elegantly with these sort of jigsaw puzzle joints. Now, hanging chairs can be subjected to massive forces, especially in bending and tension, which are exactly the forces that tend to break 3D prints. But I came up with a solution. If I did this Voronoi style pattern, I could print the pieces hollow and weave a web of steel cables through the plastic structure. The cables would support the tension forces, and the 3D prints would create the shape. I was confident this would work, but I wasn't really excited about making this thing. I've kind of had enough of massive 3D printed glue-ups for this year, and this just felt messy. I knew there was a more elegant solution, some way to avoid glue altogether. And then, like a blindside tackle from John Malecki, it hit me. What if I was thinking about this all wrong? Forget one solid piece. What if I 3D printed 1,000 little pieces and linked them with rope? Could I create a 3D printed fabric and make the world's coolest hammock chair? Way cooler than that one. Way cooler. Forget I even showed that picture. Immediately, I started designing. Triangles tessellate and their edges create a grid. Triangles it is. I designed a prototype, 3D printed a few copies on my Bamboo Lab P1S, and 1 hour later, I was ready to test my concept, which immediately hit a snag.
Yeah, this sucks.
This is why we make prototypes.
We gotta rethink this.
Some people might have seen this in the 3D model, but I am not one of those people. But when you tile the triangle, it becomes obvious. This design requires 2 parallel ropes for each axis, doubling the amount of rope for no good reason. There's also way too much friction in the little rope tunnels, making this infuriating to assemble. I figured out that I could solve both of these problems with a barrel hinge. Adding a half barrel to each side of the triangle allows the pieces to interlock around 1 rope instead of 2, and it still allows them to tessellate. I realize I keep saying this word tessellate. A tessellation is just a repeating pattern made of the same shape over and over. It seemed like this would work, but it was hard to tell with only 6 pieces, so to get that full fabric effect, I printed 20 more. This was giving me the fabric behavior that I was looking for, but jumping into mass production is a big commitment. So as a final sanity check, I showed it to my wife, Eden.
Oy. Ooh, this is how I have such clear skin. I feel like it's not gonna work. I don't know why exactly, but I feel like the only way to figure it out is to just go for it.
Well, that's all the convincing I need.
All right, mass production has begun. I have all 4 of my printers currently printing full build plates of the triangles, the X1 Carbon, the P1S, and both A1s.
Now, you might have noticed that all of these printers are made by Bamboo Lab, and that's because, in addition to being the sponsor of today's video, every machine they make is an absolute workhorse, and I am genuinely so excited to be building my very own little print farm with Bamboo Lab 3D printers. I ended up getting 2 new printers for this project, the P1S, which is one of their enclosed models, and the one you see me unboxing here, the A1 Combo. I get a lot of people asking me what they should buy for their first 3D printer, and every time I recommend the A1. This machine lives in that magical category of being both affordable and packed with features. It takes like 15 minutes to get it up and running out of the box. It is super fast. The AMS light allows you to print in multiple colors, and it's got all of those premium Bamboo features like automatic bed leveling, flow calibration, intelligent print monitoring, active motor noise canceling, and Wi-Fi connectivity. All of this filament was also provided by Bamboo Lab. This is every color of their brand new wood PLA. I wanted to create this mosaic of earth tones, and this stuff really delivers. It looks phenomenal all mixed together, although the faux wood pattern that I attempted in the initial prototype did not look phenomenal.
I still don't love the pattern.
The wood grain?
Yeah.
I kind of agree. So I was thinking maybe of like just a little triangle,
Yeah.
like an embossed triangle inside of that, so it's simple. I was able to fit 23 triangles on each build plate. So if my math is correct, each print takes between 6 and 7 hours depending on the speed of the printer. I'm hoping to do 2 rounds of printing per day. I'll start 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. That means I can print almost 200 triangles every 24 hours. So to get those 1,300 pieces I estimated, it should only take about 7 days of full-time printing, which is pretty crazy. Like, once you just add a few more printers and you can work in parallel, your production capability scales so quickly. So we'll see how this goes.
As night fell on the first day of printing, it started to dawn on me that it is now winter here in Vancouver, and the only source of heat in my uninsulated studio is this wood stove, which would go cold about an hour after I left for the night, but these prints still have about 6 hours to go. Cold drafts are the enemy of 3D prints, especially when you're printing many little pieces. Just one of these triangles knocking loose could create a domino effect of bed adhesion failures, potentially ruining the 3D printer. But I had built this giant enclosure for a reason. The heat produced by the printers warms the space, which is hopefully enough to fight off Mother Nature. So I waved goodbye for the night and crossed my fingers.
Ah, yes! Freezing temperatures can't stop the A1.
Not only did the print survive that first night, but all 7 days of printing went off without a hitch. Altogether, I used 12 kilograms of bamboo wood PLA, and at $25 per spool, that brings our running material cost to $300. Of course, I had to empty each build plate, clean the plates, restart the printers, and change filament spools, and I'm gonna estimate that takes an average of 2 minutes per build plate. So with 63 total prints, that adds another 2 hours to our time accounting. Right here is where this project became extremely meditative. I would come into the studio in the morning, start a fire, put on some chill music, and spend a couple hours just stringing the triangles onto this macrame rope. At the beginning, I started adding the second and third axes, but I quickly realized that it was going to be a huge pain dealing with all that extra rope. Much easier to string the triangles onto one axis and then weave the second and third through all the triangles once they're laid out on the table. All in all, I didn't really care how long this took because it was just so pleasant. That is until...
So I just realized I made a pretty big mistake. I've been linking the triangles together, assuming that the chair will be like this, that it will run this way, and it's long enough that it supports my entire body. However, if you think about a hanging chair, most of the curvature is along this axis. Most of the curvature is following the curve of your body along its axis. But How do I explain this? Imagine you have a snake, right? The snake bends like this. Well, if you imagine the snake as being made up as a series of hinges, all of those hinges should be perpendicular to the main axis of bending. I don't have that here, but what we currently have will make it bend all squirrely. I basically need to rotate the entire pattern.
And the first step of that was to unstring half of the triangles. I think that 6 months ago, I would have found it extremely difficult to do this, to pretty much undo hours of work for what is in all honesty probably a small improvement that only I will notice. But one of the areas where I've grown the most this year is taking the time to create a final result that I'm truly proud of. In other words, not rushing through a project. If you watched my first 3D printed chair video, you saw rushing at its worst, to the point where I almost threw 50 pounds of 3D printed plastic in the dumpster. Rushing is never worth it, and I think one of the major reasons this project was such a joy to build was because I just took the time to make good decisions that I was proud of. Which isn't always exciting in the moment. It's not constant action. It involves sometimes spending 10 minutes building and 2 hours thinking, but on balance, it feels 100 times better.
All right. Well, it took all morning, but like most things you dread, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But looking at this now, I got a lot of work ahead of me, so let's get back to weaving.
After nearly 24 hours of work, it was finally time to get this thing up in the air. I found this really cool piece of driftwood on Facebook Marketplace. It was actually marketed as a wizard staff, and I thought it would be perfect for the support beam. Now, I was not a Boy Scout. One skill that I want to develop is knots, and what better way to get better at something than doing it 40 times in a row? So I pulled up the diagram for a bowline knot. I remember reading as a kid that was a great loop knot. Got to tying, and sure enough, by the last knot, I had impeccable bowline technique. No diagram needed.
All right, let's hoist this thing up. I kind of rushed attaching it to the stick because I really wanted to get to this moment. Hopefully that doesn't bite me in the butt. Let's just raise it up. Let's see what it looks like. In 3, 2, 1. Yo. Whoa, oh my God. Whoa, this looks insane.
This project involved a lot of staring.
Whoa.
I was staring because this thing looks wild, unlike anything I've ever made. But I was also staring because now I had to figure out how to turn this hanging piece of 3D printed fabric into a chair. For this, I took inspiration from Alexander Calder. This artist built incredible mobiles, and the way you get these to balance is working from the top down. So I turned to the highest level of my chair, the wizard staff, which clearly needed some work. It looked messy, uneven, and it was bending way too much.
All right, well, I guess I have no choice now.
You're probably not gonna believe me, but that was not supposed to break. I was trying to show how dangerously bendy the wizard staff is, or was, and why I was going to replace it with this beautiful piece of walnut that I had kicking around my studio. In addition to being way stronger than the wizard staff, it has enough material that I could drill holes to evenly space the ropes and make them look about 100 times more neat. I was a little sad that the wizard staff didn't work out. It had that whimsical, organic look that would really complement the overall look of this chair, and as is, the walnut wasn't cutting it, so I took it outside and started power carving. The carved walnut looked perfect, and this time I was determined to tie on the 3D printed fabric right. Apparently, the dangerous book for boys was lying to me. The bowline kind of sucks, at least if you want any ability to tighten or adjust the loop. What I needed was a top line hinge. This wonderful knot gives you a sliding loop that lets you adjust the amount of tension, which is a million times easier than trying to tie the perfect sized loop. For this second go around, I also tied all the ropes to a shackle, which cleaned everything up even more.
All right, last one. Please work. In 3, 2, 1. Yo! That is perfect! Oh my gosh, it's hanging perfectly, like perfectly level. Wow, now we can work.
And boy, oh boy, did I have some work ahead of me. I was pretty nervous about this step, actually forming the chair. There's a lot of unknowns here, but I just thought of my boy Alexander Calder and took it one step at a time, top to bottom. I started by adding some extra supports to the chonky wizard staff since all the other ropes were just passing through, and then I began tying up the loose ropes with top line hinge. As I worked my way downwards, I gradually added more and more tension to the ropes and brought them closer to the center, which increased the curvature as the fabric gets closer and closer to the seat. I don't know how many times I need to learn this lesson.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
But really, things are never as hard as you think they're gonna be. For example, forming the seat. I thought I would have to make this complicated transition in midair, but all it really took was raising one of those horizontal ropes, which naturally created the low point of the chair. Then I could just tension all the ropes in between to make a more gradual transition, and Bob's your uncle.
All right, I still have some cleaning up to do on the ropes, but I think this thing is ready for the first official sit test. I have not even snuck a sit so far, and I'm really nervous because there's a lot of ways that it could unexpectedly fail, but only one way to find out. Here we go. First sit test in 3, 2, 1. Ooh. Whoa. Oh, dude, it's working. We're sitting in it. It's, whoa, yo. Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
Once the initial excitement wore off, and trust me, I was not rushing this moment. This was so fun.
It's like a little cocoon. Wow.
I found myself at a crossroads. Was the chair finished? It looked really cool and you could sit in it, but it wasn't the most comfortable chair.
It doesn't exactly encourage good posture.
There's a reason why store-bought hammock chairs have that open back. It allows you to lean backwards, but I wanted to show off the 3D printed pattern as much as possible, which is why I continued the fabric up the back. But that forces your head forwards like one of those egg chairs. Yes, it looks cool, but not very comfortable. Opening up the back would be an irreversible decision, but after a good night's sleep, I knew it was the right thing to do. Cutting those strings left all of these triangles just hanging in space, and it gave me the idea to string them up along the bottom of the walnut. I don't typically add purely ornamental pieces to my builds, but this looked perfect, almost like it was meant to be.
That is awesome.
I took off some of the extra triangles to refine the outline, I got a seat cushion, and it was finally time to show this chair to Eden. She hasn't seen anything since I got her input on that prototype weeks ago, so I was excited to see what she thought.
All right, 3, 2, 1, turn around.
Sorry, do it again, I was burping.
3, 2, 1, turn around.
Oh! Wow. Whoa, that is crazy. I don't know if I like it or I hate it. It's like modern art, but I don't think my child could do this. I Okay, I don't know how to feel about that.
Well, you lean back.
I just want a chair with a face massage built in.
It's like a cat toy.
Oh wow, that's like surprisingly comfortable.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, color me purple. That's not the thing.
After seeing Eden's reaction, it was clear that this chair has impact. Chris Salamone from Four Eyes Furniture talked about this idea of impact in a recent video. To quote Chris, if you want to make and sell original designs, don't focus on making pretty things, focus on making impactful things.
Such like a production.
Yeah.
Wow, this is like quite something.
It's definitely a statement piece.
Love it or hate it, you can't ignore it. And the people who like this chair will really like it, which is a great way to find a passionate buyer. But before we sell this thing, let's do some accounting. Our running time count of designing and building this chair is at 34 hours and 50 minutes. But obviously, this video is gonna help sell the chair, so let's just round it up to an even 40 hours. We used $300 worth of bamboo wood PLA, 2 spools of this macrame cord, a bit of finish, and a shackle, bringing our material cost to about $350. Now in the past, I've sold some of my pieces at a predetermined price before I release the video. But that's not actually a great way to find out what something is worth. The tried and true method of knowing the value of something is putting it up for auction and letting the market decide. Which is exactly what I'm doing with this chair.
All right, the auction is live.
Which means that if you really love this chair, you can buy it. The link to the auction is in the description, and it will be open for 2 weeks after this video is published. And if you want to 3D print your own hanging chair, I'm putting the files for free download on makerworld.com. Now, I do need to decide on a starting bid price, and I feel like $1,500 seems reasonable. Assuming it sells for that, that would give me an hourly rate of $28.75, which is a fine wage, but it does make you appreciate why one-off or limited run furniture pieces cost what they do, especially when you take into account other costs like employees and rent. Now, I don't personally think this chair is worth 10 grand. I just don't have that level of confidence in my work. But if the auction bids up the price, I will update the title and thumbnail to reflect the final selling price. So, if you want to buy the chair, link is in the description, and for everyone else, check back in 2 weeks. On a slightly different note, this has been a wild year for my channel. I have never experienced growth like this, and it is all thanks to you guys for your watching, for your comments, for your support. And I want to give a special thank you to my top supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships, Paige Arlt, Luis Armendariz, and my mom, Kathy Kurt. Love you, Mom.